All right, guys, we've got another podcast, and this time I've got some guests with me. So I've got two guests on today. So for this wonderful topic that we've got to go with, and let's take a minute and just introduce, because if you've watched any of the other content that we've produced and put up there, like Sea of Thieves, we did some Brood War stuff. Any of that stuff, you probably have seen these people, but just real quick, we'll kind of go around so you guys know who you can kind of hear or see because they've got pictures to represent them today. So my first guest, you haven't seen him as much, but I'm sure you have heard him quite a bit, and that would be Jaime over there. So what's up, bud?
Hey, thank you for having me. Yeah, you guys have definitely heard me a lot. I'm the loud guy. My name's Jaime, and happy to be here. We're gonna be doing these every week with Nan, and or we'll be doing a couple of these with Nan. So look forward to discussions and getting your feedback.
Good stuff. And of course, our second guest that we have on here this week is probably the scariest pirate in the Sea of Thieves, and that is Chino, of course.
Yes, hi, I'm probably the one that you see steering the boat 9 times out of 10,
Yes,
and
exactly.
sometimes crashing.
Hey, it's just making it hard mode. That's all it is.
Yeah, changing gears and talking magic tonight. So,
Yeah, switching it up. So that's what tonight's going to be. It's going to be all magic related, and our main topic is going to be net decking versus home brewing, because those are two terms that kind of get thrown around in the magic scene. I'm sure people have heard them. I'm sure at one point somebody has probably tried to use it as an insult or something at one point. But we'll talk about that and kind of break that down. What does each term mean, and kind of go through everything, and then we'll kind of dive into some decks and things like that. So when you hear that kind of term, net decking, home brewing, is it like something positive, negative? What do you guys think with that?
Well, the first thing I'm gonna say real quick is it's funny that if people are actually doing that as an insult, the nerd community has has taken a has taken a bit of a hit here. Um, I personally, I think it's a little bit of both. I think net decking in general, and I mean, there's certain decks that essentially shape the format,
Mm-hmm.
and as professional players and actually even rookies that bring in, you know, these decks that they've been playing and they shape up the format. People will spend a lot of time to copy them and replicate the things that are going on, and in some ways that kind of makes the meta like get stuck in a certain area, and it doesn't feel good sometimes. But then there's also a scenario where all these net decks are creating opportunities where maybe the top tier decks aren't aggro decks, and this allows for us to create these decks where we're not having to worry about certain things and can pull up strategies like mill and stuff. So I think it's a little bit of both personally.
Chino, what exactly is net decking for people that aren't familiar?
essentially, it's basically Googling a deck and then just assembling it as is, maybe making a little tweaks, but it's using a template basically.
Oh, okay. And so like homebrew would just be the opposite of that. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna.
just you yourself making some deck up, just with an idea and seeing if it works.
Okay. So are you partial to one over the other?
I prefer to net deck
Mm-hmm.
because I am not the best at home brewing. I'm good at contributing to home brews, but coming up with them on my own, it doesn't go well. So,
Okay.
plus I don't have a lot of time to play, so I just prefer to just grab a deck and have some fun.
Well, it's like you
So,
already know that this deck works, right?
yeah,
So
basically.
yeah, I like that. What about you, Jaime? Are you a homebrewer, net decker? Where are you? Where
You
you
know
sit
what?
in this camp?
It's funny. I'm actually gonna piggyback off of Chino's comment. He's actually the guy that I've been going to as of late for all my crazy ass brews. So I'll, if I see him on Steam or Discord, I'll say, "Hey, Chino, I got this crazy effing idea. I need your thoughts. Let's work on it together."
Look at this
And it's
ley
almost like,
line deck I've created.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was
that's
a terrible, terrible idea. And it wasn't even my idea. It was some other crazy guy that I was like, "Oh, this could actually potentially
Wait a
be
minute.
good." And it wasn't. I tried. I literally tried everything I could, and I could not make it work. But um, when I first started playing Magic, it was really about finding a deck that was doing well. So, a tournament deck that was performing well, maybe a meta deck, a tier deck, and really kind of trying to learn it. And then as I started to play more and more, especially with MTG Arena and online, I found that after you kind of learn the deck and you're playing with it, it kind of feels like you're going with the flow of the stream instead of against it. And as I was just kind of experimenting with a bunch of different things, I saw all these cards that were getting released that were really, really cool, but they didn't have a place in the meta. And they were kind of almost going to waste until the overpowered decks were rotating out of that meta. So I started just kind of playing more with it. And honestly, now I'm more of a brew kind of guy. I just sometimes will get up and be like, oh, I wonder if I could do this. And I'll spend, 2 hours or 3 hours trying to put it together, test it out, it bombs, and then I'm just like, well, that was a waste of my day. Moving on to the next thing. But yeah, I think I prefer doing home brews or taking some idea from the meta and taking it in a completely different direction. I mean, if that's still technically net decking, then I'm kind of blurring the line between the two. But I do prefer kind of bringing something to light and giving it a new spin.
Well, I think that kind of speaks to the flex spots that are in specific decks. So there are cards in even the neck decks that exist that are like, you know what? If you're seeing a lot of aggro decks, maybe take out these one or two cards and put in more creature removal. And you have that flexibility to kind of adjust your list to kind of gear it towards whatever your shop's meta or whatever you keep running into online and things like that. But I think it's also dependent on the format about homebrew versus neck deck as well. Like I think if you're going to be playing super competitively, it's very hard to play super competitively with a homebrew. I think it's like if you're going to be playing something like Legacy, if you're going to be playing something like Modern, and even top tier standard, like you were talking about, Jaime, with like the tier list, like you need to be playing kind of some of the best decks. And in order to get access to those, oftentimes you have to look them up and figure it out and be like, okay, in the overall meta that exists in the entire world of Magic the Gathering, these cards have found to work the best together to combat the other decks that exist in this meta, not just like localized shops and things like that, which is a whole different thing that people need to kind of be aware of. If you go to a big tournament or you're playing a big event online or something like that, you need to be prepared for the best decks and those tier list decks that exist. I kind of am a both person, right? I like to do home brewing and I like to play net deck and like tier lists. Like I'm trying to collect like everything for Modern so I can play like any deck whenever I want. But I also love playing just weird and wacky strategies. And so whenever a new set comes out, I'm always like, okay, what can I do to make something weird? Or if there's alternate win cons that exist, like Mill, like Jaime's got traumatized as his image for us today. Like, I think that's a perfect way to say, okay, what's another way that I can win without just attacking? Because I feel like I get too bored with doing the straightforward, I'm just going to attack. And no, I want to find a better way to do this. So I think that's cool when there's cards that exist that kind of force people to start brewing. Like, no, go ahead. What were you going to say, Chino?
That's what, because I've seen, I'll open up packs or whatever, and it's like, oh, that card looks really cool. Like, I wonder if any deck uses it, and there isn't one. And it's like, either I make one myself, or I don't play it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, for me anyway, it's like I could spend the time and, go round and round in circles to try to make a deck. I know practice makes perfect, but it's a big time commitment. Or I could just look something up, kind of thing. So it's I do wish that I would homebrew more, just to try to make a deck with some of the cards that I think look really interesting.
Do you think that you would enjoy doing limited then? Which kind of takes that, I have a time crunch, I'm going to draft a deck, or I'm going to get a sealed pool, and I'm going to try to make a deck with just the cards I have, because it's just like deck construction, battle it out? Or do you just like, well, I only have a limited amount of time, I would rather just play powerful stuff instead of a mix of some of this stuff is super weak just because I couldn't get the best cards in my draft, or I didn't have the best sealed pool, so I might just fight somebody that has more powerful cards than I have?
Yeah, I mean, I just like just competitive decks. Basically, I don't want to find. Actually, I tend to avoid the quote unquote most powerful ones or whatever, like the super aggro, like mono red or whatever.
Oh
And I
God.
play I play other, just other stuff that is fun for me to play, but still competitive. So,
do you lean towards particular colors then when you play?
yeah, typically I'm that guy. It's blue, black, and red.
Okay. The Grixis, hence why you
Yeah.
got Nicobolas as
Yes.
your image.
Yeah.
Yes. I like it. Jaime, what about you? Is there a particular color pattern that you kind of lean towards when you're playing right now?
You know what? I'm unfortunately that guy that's everywhere.
Mm.
As people have heard me on Sea of Thieves, so I'm all over the place. I'd say I pretty much switch my deck every other 2 weeks. But I'd say that if I had to pick the colors that I like the best, I would say it's either band, so blue, green, and white,
Mm.
or I like teamer, which is red, green, and blue as well. So those are
All right.
probably the
Okay.
two colors that I would consider, you know, my colors basically.
Yeah, that two group sets right there.
Hmm.
I like it. Yeah, I'm kind of that blue, black, green, sultai variations of those three colors together. I don't tend to play the aggro-y red decks. I don't really care much for white. So I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some strong decks that exist within those color pies though. And a lot of them though are very um, linear in the game plan for me, where the other colors I find more puzzle like and how to solve this and try to figure this out and work through it. I don't know. That's
Yeah, and that's why I like like you said, I like the more control-y or
Mhm.
mid-gamey sort of decks rather than the full-on aggro like the mono whites or reds where it's just load up the field with, small tokens or creatures and
Weenie
just hope
white.
hope your
Hope
opponent
for the
doesn't have a
best.
board wipe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you get that feels bad moment.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
Nan was gonna have the rebuttal already for me when I was going to say, technically, Nan, in modern you do play an aggro deck, Mr. Infect, because it only
so
takes 10 points of
technically,
infect to win.
technically, that is like a combo aggro deck.
Okay. Oh, so okay,
You
got
know,
it. Good politician
actually.
response for me.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. It's like the kind of 100% aggro deck that exists really are like Affinity, which doesn't really exist very much anymore for modern. And then you've got like the humans, right? Those sort of lists. You've got your there's actually a mono red prowess deck that's running around as like an aggro deck in modern. Eldrazi, Tron, Dredge, those sort of things. But then you've got like the mid-rangey things like Jund, and there's different ways you could play in modern. But yeah, I don't know. It's harder to do home brewing in modern though, because I've done it a
100%.
couple times and I've tried different things. But it's like even like when you play like Commander or something like that, right? There is a competitive version of Commander, and there's like a tier system essentially for decks, and like the most optimal tiered versions of decks is like that tier 10, right? Where you are like, I have my deck is just full of tutors, and I'm going to be trying to win on turn 4, turn 5. In like a 100 card deck, you're like, wow, you must have a lot of ways to search up and find the way to beat everybody in order to be able to do that. And then if you come and play somebody with just like a kitchen table normal commander deck, it's like you don't even stand a chance. It's kind of like that when you're bringing a homebrew modern deck versus a bunch of tiered versions of the most competitive modern decks that exist. And I feel like in standard, it's a little bit easier. You can be able
Right.
to sneak some wins in, and you can kind of adjust your list and make a kind of more homebrewy, fun list in standard because it's a smaller card pool.
that's what I was about to say. It's as you add cards in, it's the combinations just become just infinitely more complicated.
Yeah, essentially because of
So,
it's power curve, right? Is
yeah.
thinking about it in standard, the power curve's a little less, a little less bit of a curve, whereas in modern, it's like, oh my god, and then you have legacy where it takes another, giant ass spike. It's like, all right, well, this is amazing. So yeah, I think it has to do with the card pool and the power curve of just cards in the format.
So kind of going along with standard related cards and going along with alternate win cons that we've talked about, I figure we can talk about just kind of the draw to wanting to brew, because we're all mill players. All of us have built a mill deck at least once in the current standard, I would say, or historic or whatever version that we're currently playing at this point, because I know I'm switching over to pretty much just playing historic on Arena. I think Chino, you're also switched over to that. Jaime, are you on historic train, or are you still bouncing between both?
I'm half and half. I'm having fun playing some of the standard decks currently, but I've also been having a lot of fun playing some of the historic decks as well. I think if I want to continue doing the whole homebrew style of deck, I'm gonna probably have to stick a little bit more to standard. There's options to do it in historic, but again, it's that whole power curve where there's certain decks that after a certain amount of turns, it doesn't matter what you draw, you're pretty much fucked.
Mm-hmm. So I know all of us. So before we get too deep into alternate win cons, I was just thinking about standard and the Cauldron decks that have existed, because I think we've all have done versions of it. I think both of you guys have played the Rakdos version, and that's the ones that you guys like. I brewed up my own version, which was Mardu, and I splashed white in there just because I wanted that extra life drain in there by having that kind of aristocrat style. But it's harder and not as consistent as some of the just kind of pure Rakdos and net deck versions of it. But I still, when I play, I like playing that one just because I like the more aristocrat style of the drain, more drain effects, and I get access to that by playing white. But
and to comment on this, I had the pleasure of playing against that deck, and it fucking sucked. And not that your deck sucked; it sucked playing against it. And the reason being because the some of the meta decks and the net decks that are designed to be consistent and be steady, when they're not, they're very susceptible to getting run over, not only by another net deck, but also by a creative homebrew strategy that just needs to stall you out long enough to be able to get their combo online. And then after they get their combo online, it doesn't really matter what happens to you. You're pretty much screwed. So against that match where we were playing, I believe it was actually Rakdos versus your Splash of White.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself where I was in that slow hand, I was building up, but I really couldn't get ahead. And then he was able to kind of create his field and stabilize. And then after he stabilized, I couldn't get ahead of him because of that advantage he had with the additional color and some of the other cards that were giving him a bit of an advantage. So, splashing an additional color or kind of adding something that may seem or make a deck a little bit less consistent does have payoff, especially when you're getting to the mid range to late game part of the game. So. And I noticed it, and it hurt real bad.
It hurt, yeah.
It actually reminds me of I was playing against, I think it was historic, but I was playing against, it was obviously a homebrew where player didn't have a win condition. It was just infinitely keep shuffling your graveyard into your library.
Mm-hmm. One of those strategies.
And that's it. I mean, I was sitting there for like 30 minutes going like, all right, I'm just curious to see how are you going to win? And there isn't one. It's just you keep going until your opponent leaves.
Yep, that's the win con. I'm going to annoy my opponent until they leave. And I guess it's like if you have enough time on your hand for those matches that it's like you're going to get those 30-minute matches where people are like, I'm not going to leave. If you can't kill me, we're going to keep playing this game.
Right.
Spoilers, was he playing Nexus of Fate?
No, actually. So maybe it was Stand. I can't remember, but it was just a spell that when he cast it, it would just let him take his graveyard and put it back in his deck. And then also a land that he had no maximum hand size.
Mm-hmm.
So we just drew as much stuff as he wanted. And then he had like a million counter. It was all just counter spells. So even if you got it like lucky and drew a counter spell to try to get that card out, he would just counter it. So
if we can find this guy, I will gladly give my spot up on the podcast
to hear his thoughts on this. So I know I've run into a bunch of decks on Arena that I've been like, wow, this deck is cool, and I haven't seen this deck on just kind of one of the websites or seen it in coverage or anything like that. And so I was like, I'm going to try to remember the best I can and try to recreate this deck. And then I'll play a couple of games with it and go, oh, okay, that was fun. Now I'm going to go back to a different deck. Like I like to be able to find new decks while playing Arena, but I feel like if you get high enough ranking, all those like homebrews start to disappear.
Yeah. Unless you're really good and you make something that specifically counters the the most common meta decks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to touch on that, Nanners, if I may a minute, that actually, and I'll have Chino kind of comment on this as well, because he's my brewing partner when it comes to certain chaotic things I like to do. So to touch on what you just said, I would like to use an example of a deck that I actually was playing against in Standard, which was Mono Blue Devotion. And once I saw this deck just kind of in action, I remembered some of the cards, but not enough where I could like, oh, I'm gonna do the exact same strategy. So after the game, which I got my ass handed to me, I tried to remember some of it or what the combo was about, and then also kind of add my new spin to it. So I made this Mono Blue Devotion deck, and I still have it, and it's still a work in progress. I've had Chino kind of help me, and in some crazy ways, it does work. And Chino, I'll let you comment on this as well, because he was kind of helping me tweak a little bit about, hey, I don't think we need 4 of these. We may only need 3 or 2. So the funny thing is that for decks that are mid-rangey to control, if they don't have answers, or they have, if they're waiting till turn 6 or 7, you can steal wins for them, because some of these strategies can be efficient. So I'll let kind of Chino comment a little bit on it, but we had some fun doing another, earlier, and we'll talk about the mill part of it as well, where it's just like a hyper blue mill deck with Lucky Clover, and I was having a blast with that deck. But that deck was literally a race to the finish. They were either going to run my face into the ground, or I was going to mill them, and it was a race every time. And I think, the key point I'd like to make is with the homebrews, that's the fun of it. That's the aspect of it. It's not so much about being competitive or trying to be or have that consistent win record. Sometimes it's just about having something that's fun that you're enjoying playing, and really kind of like, for me personally, ruining somebody's day that has like this mythic championship deck that they've copied card by card, and I have a bunch of crappy cards I put together, and I steal a win from them, and that makes me feel a little more accomplished in the game. It's all right, I'll turn it over to you if you want to make some comments about it, because you put in some really good feedback on that deck.
I don't know what else to add to that.
It's like, right? It's like you explained that really well. But I think that brings up a good point, though, that you said is like he helped you with it, which goes to streamlining homebrews, right? It's you have to put in the reps with it, and you have to be able to sit here and go, okay, this works, this doesn't work. What can I do to have someone help me to figure out where I can optimize it and where I can make this better? And is it easier to do that with Magic Online and Magic Arena, and having access to just the internet and ability to do that instead of doing it in person? Because you guys mainly play online now. Yeah.
And I mean, I'd say 100%, it makes it so much easier with the online version, just because, I mean, you don't have to worry about looking for cards in your binders and, do I have this card or do I not? And then, even if things are organized, it's, you might miss it or whatever. Whereas with the Arena, you just type it in the search bar and boom, you can get the exact card you're looking for, or the exact, use effect that you want, or whatever. So I think that makes it just infinitely more
easier to be able
approachable,
to brew up and stuff. Mm-hmm.
to make your own. So
I like
every card is at your fingertips.
Yeah, I know I've done some mistakes sometimes where I thought I've owned a card and been looking through my collection and going, where is this? I know I have this, only to go online like MTGO or MTG Arena and be like, oh, I have a digital copy of this card. I don't have a paper copy.
I mean, yeah, the other thing is it shows you what you don't have as well.
Yes.
So you're like, oh, I don't have that card. Maybe I'll craft it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Well, and let me add this as well. Let's talk about this for a second as well. Technically, in theory, most of these net decks that become tournament decks start as home brews.
Yes.
And it really is people just basically coming up with an idea, getting in the reps, and trying a bunch of different things. I've watched countless streamers play where they'll put in a bunch of cards because it looks good on paper. They go to play a game and they're like, "Oh my god, why did I even add these cards in my deck? I'm
This
an
is
idiot,"
hot
and take
garbage.
them back out. Yeah, that's the whole part of it. So I think with that being said, the meta and what kind of decks are active really determines or creates an environment for home brews. Because what happens is if you have a lot of aggro decks and your home brew is built to deal with aggro decks and there aren't any other types of decks in the meta currently, you're going to steal a lot of wins from the aggro decks if it's designed to beat them. And you're also going to sneak wins from people who are like, what the fuck is he playing? I have no idea what's going on right now. Oh my God, I just lost the game. Now, if there's a diverse format and it kind of touches on our point earlier with modern, where there's way more, it's a bigger curve of power spike. It's a lot more of a card pool. You're going to have a lot more variety. So it's a lot harder to be like, oh, my home brew is going to be able to deal with every single thing in the format without including certain power spike cards that are part of every format. And I think that's the whole fun part of it is that there's I think as Blizzard, oh my goodness, as Wizards of the Coast releases more and more cards, certain cards, depending on what the meta is, do have a place in the meta if people are willing to invest the time and get the reps in to play around with different strategies. And it could even be taking a current net deck and modifying it by adding different colors and still keeping the general theme of it and making your own homebrew with that.
No, that's a good point, and I think that speaks to when new sets come out too. Every time that there's a new release, everyone starts that home brewing process, like you were talking about. Even the pros sit there and start grinding and figuring out, okay, what way can I make a deck with these powerful cards to make something work. Do these cards fit into an existing deck? Do I need to make a new shell around these cards? Like, how does this work? And it kind of goes to them putting in those reps. And I think that's so much easier with MTG Arena, MTGO, whatever digital version of the game that you're playing right now, because I play both, because I have legacy and modern decks on MTG Online, so I can sit there and play games and stuff like that. But even on there, I don't play as many homebrew decks. Like, the most homebrewy deck that I have is Doran the Siege. What is this? What's this? Siege Tower is what he is. So if you're not familiar with this card, which I'm sure you guys that are listening at home probably aren't, and you guys listening with me right now probably aren't, but it's an 05 creature. It's legendary tree folk. It costs black, green, and white. And it says each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. And like you see a card like that and you're like, I want to brew with this. I'm just going to fill my deck with a bunch of things with big butts, and I'm just going to just wail on everybody. Like, it's like,
You would.
right? It's the most like, you know what? This card is just asking to brew something with. And I think that's when you have a bigger card pool, like you were talking about, Chino, is you get to find weird cards like this. But even within standard sets, like we have cards like Simic Ascendancy, right? Which is that kind of blue and a green enchantment that exists, that you're all about putting different counters on stuff. And if you put counters on your creatures, then you can be able to put a counter on Simic Ascendancy. It's an enchantment, and when you have 20 counters on it, you win the game. You can also pay 3 mana, 1 colorless, green, and a blue, and put a +1 counter on a creature. So you can guarantee get at least a counter on Simic Ascendancy off of that, but you can build some cool ways around it. Like, I've built one for standard. I know when all of us got together and we're playing kitchen table Magic, one of our buddies, Jaime, had brought this list and was playing it when we were all battling it out. So, I don't know. I think alternate win cons and just weird cards that exist kind of are designed for brewing and stuff.
Yeah, and to add to that, yeah, I did, and that was a time. I'm pretty sure it got my ass kicked, but that wasn't the point of the deck. And in a lot of the cases, I think that these cards are introduced for a reason. Now, you may have a card like, when I'm going to bring up Oko, which I know can be a sore subject for a lot of people who are playing in standard, but you have a card like Oko that really did, at the end of the day, diversify the format quite a bit. But its power spike was also really, really high. So I think as Wizards is introducing more cards, they do introduce new cards to, to diversify that format and to really kind of encourage home brewing and to encourage people to have fun and create new decks and make things kind of happen. So, I think at the end of the day, that's what they want. They want the format to have more decks in them. They want people to come up and bring new things. And I think they do look to the player base to kind of tell them what's working and what's not working. And as of the last, year or two, they've really kind of stuck to their guns in terms of making it, more viable for more decks to exist in each of the formats, and they'll ban cards. They'll release cards that probably never should have released in the first place.
I was about to say, I need to rein themselves back in, because some of the cards that they're putting out are just absolutely bonkers. So it sort of forces you to splash that color because it's so good that if you don't use it, your opponent will, and it'll probably, let them, or, take the win from you. So, I mean, like you said, Oko was a perfect example. Like, everyone was putting green-blue in their deck somehow, some way. So,
yeah.
I would like to see Wizards kind of take or evaluate the format and really look at what is dominant. And then as they're releasing, maybe not the next set, to throw a couple curveballs, not to throw any color that anybody's using. If they're like, hey, these two colors are the most underrepresented colors ever, or this color combination
White
hasn't seen any light yet, let's throw a couple cards in that and make people have to use these colors.
It's hard though, because they design sets like 2 years in advance. So
Fair,
it's like, and that design process, it's like, okay, I'm working on a set and they're going through it, and it's like, this set is coming out in 2 years. So it's like, it's hard to predict what the meta is going to be like and things like that. But to speak on the banning and printing powerful cards, which I did a short video for those that might have seen that related to Modern, but we can talk more specifically with Standard, because I was looking up stats about that, and it was, we got to see cards get banned in Standard during the Zendikar block. So like, that was Jace, that was Stoneforge Mystic, those like super powerful cards. And then that was the last time we had a Standard banning. And then after that, it was a huge jump, many years where they were like, they're still printing powerful cards, but it wasn't, for a couple of years. And now it's like, every set something is getting banned in Standard. So it is, I don't know. I like that they're printing powerful stuff, and I like that they're pushing the envelope and trying to design things that are powerful, but at the same time, it's like you're designing things and we're constantly seeing things banned, so it makes it hard for people to want to invest in paper versions of the cards, because I spend, $150 on 4 Okos at least, maybe more. I don't remember how they were priced when he was in every single deck before he got banned. And then it's like, he gets banned, and now it's like, I don't know, let's see what his current price is, because he's not legal in like any format anymore.
Guessing 250.
Thinking?
Yeah,
let's see.
I'm guessing. No, I'm thinking he's right, because I remember
$12.
Oh, 12. Okay.
$12 still. But at his height, I mean, what was he at? $67 for one card. So that was his height, and then now he's been banned in like everything, and he's like $12. So, but that's, I mean, that's a discussion for another day. I think we could easily spend hours sitting here talking about banning
3-hour podcast on how shitty Oko. So you're basically telling me some jackass 2 years ago thought Oko would be a good idea. Even more time now.
Well, and it's funny because when Oko came out, people were like, they held up pictures of Oko, and they held up pictures of, what was that 2-mana planeswalker that was running in Jund?
What's his name? The tree guy.
Yes.
The tree vampire guy, or whatever the hell it was.
Hold on, what's his name? Ren 6. So
Let me look up this card. I don't know
so Ren 6 is, you aren't going to be familiar with this card if you only play Standard, because it was released in the Modern Horizons, which is a Modern exclusive set. But it was a red and a green for a 3 loyalty planeswalker, and his +1 lets you return up to 1 target land card from your graveyard to your hand. His -1 deals 1 damage to any target, and his -7 gives you an emblem and has instant and sorceries in your graveyard have retrace, which means you can discard a land card and cast them from your graveyard. People held up Ren and 6, and then they also held up Oko. And they're like, if I went up to a Magic player that didn't know which cards were printed in a Modern exclusive set, which one would you think was a Modern exclusive, and which one would you think standard? And it's like, between Oko and Ren and 6, most people are like, oh, Oko looks like it would be something exclusive for a Modern set and not in a standard set. But it's like, nope, actually they printed Oko in standard and it got banned and everything.
Though to be fair, I did play Red and 6 because I was playing Junded Modern at the time. And Red and 6 did, it wasn't an overpowered card per se, but it did carry weight, and it did kind of change how Jund operated and how it functioned as a deck. It actually allowed Jund to become a tier, 1 deck again, and it really made the deck more consistent, and that's what it was looking for.
I mean, it's a powerful card. It's banned in Legacy.
Yes, yes, and it was causing a lot of problems in Legacy.
Yeah, at the same time that Oko got banned in Standard, which was in November, was the same time that Ren and 6 got banned in Legacy, which is, hey, they're printing powerful cards, if that's not any indication right there. So let's talk a little bit about kind of streamlining homebrew decks, because, Jaime, you were talking about this earlier, that Chino has kind of helped you out and helped you streamline some of your decks. So what does that process look like if you're trying to improve your homebrew?
So it starts with a bunch of shit in a bag, and we kind of stir it up a little bit and hope for the best. And then I bring someone in like Chino, who has more of a logical way of looking at things. I just look at things and I'm like, oh, they're prettier. This could work. We're going to make it all work. And he kind of makes it a little bit more concise for me and kind of gets me back on topic. But it really is, for me, it starts with an idea. So the idea can come from a particular card. It can come from getting my ass handed to me by a different card and saying, hey, I wonder if I could change this strategy and make it something interesting. But it starts with an idea. For me, for example, and I know we're going to touch this, and this is probably the topic that we all have a lot of experience with, it's mill. So mill is just a fun thing to do. I know that some of you who are listening to us are going to call me a fucking scumbag, and we're all probably going to be scumbags by the end of this conversation. It's fun. If you've never played mill, you should try it. You're gonna walk away hating yourself, maybe, because you're like, I can't believe my edict of never doing mill to anyone, but you're gonna have fun. And I dare you to come and look at me in the eye and tell me you didn't have fun. So mill is one of those things where it's fun to play. Now, it's never been, I think it's only been a tier 3 deck, and that's us being generous in Modern. It's never really been past like tier 4, tier 5 in Standard, if ever. And it's because the deck steals wins, but it's not consistent. Now, it's still really fun to do, but it's weak to aggro. It's it's weak to hand disruption, which loves his thought erasures. So 2 thought erasures in my entire fucking deck is useless. So it's got a lot of weaknesses. But again, it goes to the whole idea of that if you're able to stabilize and get a couple combos going, it takes off, and it's a race. And a lot of the mill decks that we have played together, we took a couple of different approaches. So the first step is an idea. The second step is, what is the meta? What's going on in the meta? What's going on that I'm going to have a hard time to deal with? And I'll tell you right now, the answer is aggro. Aggro is going to, if you're ever going to play mill, aggro is going to be your number one problem. You're going to get bum rush, and even before you get your combo online, you're going to be dead. So as we're building this deck, the first thing we look at is the primary weakness we're going to have, and that's for us, as Chino and I have talked about, it's aggro. How do we deal with aggro decks? So it's talking about stalling. At what turn do we need to be able to get our combo online and stay consistent? How do we stay ahead? What do we do to stall? So once you're trying to solve this weakness and or this problem, there's so many different aspects that you can go about doing it, and there's also so many different things that can go wrong. as we were kind of building the mill deck that I still have put together actually, which is a lot of fun. Gino and I thought about, oh well, we need a couple of defensive cards to be able to stay alive. Cool. We put in a bunch of defensive cards. We found that even though that was letting us it's staying alive a little bit longer, we weren't able to stay alive long enough.
Yes, a lot
So
of the
that
times it was one turn too late, but
yes, yes. So then we started moving and saying, okay, what could have made us survive that addition? We put cards in there. Then what happened is the combo became less consistent. So then it was great. We made it to turn 5. I have nothing. So so it ended up for us being that it was just a race mechanic, and we had to be okay with the idea that our deck was going to race the other player. And if it won, great. If it didn't, it was I'm sorry, it didn't. And there was no way around that. So it really is coming up with an idea, figuring out what the meta is, finding your deck's place in the meta, and really kind of keeping that strategy concise while knowing that you're going to lose and you're going to have a lot of weaknesses, and you may not be able to address all the weaknesses like some of the net meta decks can. And that was a long-winded answer. I apologize.
No, that's great. That was a great explanation for it. So Chino, if you're put in this like position, I know you don't really tend to do your own home brewing, but you do like that support system and are helping Jaime out. So what does that look like from your point of view then? Like he told you about kind of the steps to go through it, but like if you're just sitting down, he's like, "Hey, I've got this new deck." Like where do you,
That's exactly how it happened.
Yeah,
Get on this board. I got a new deck. We got to try.
So
yeah,
where
I mean,
does that come
basically,
in?
yeah, it's I don't know. I guess it's easier for me to take a look at something that already exists and tweak it rather than just start from nothing. Um, so that's where it's fun for me to just try to optimize. Like we said, we have a goal in mind. Like, all right, we want to make a mill deck, and just looking at what's there, and then say, all right, well, we can adjust this slightly, and make like put a few more counter spells in to maybe delay him one more turn because we're missing the mill by one turn kind of thing. So I don't know. That's pretty much what
So is
what
it
I consider
usually
fun.
just he's playing and streaming it up, and you're watching his point of view?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
it's
Sorry, I
like
guess I
after
didn't answer
every
your
game,
question.
do you guys tweak the decks, or is it you play a couple of games and then, or do you just kind of it depends on what you're fighting against and what deck you're using?
Sometimes, yeah, it depends. Like if we just get absolutely stomped because we didn't draw right, it's like, all right, well, we just didn't draw what we needed, so let's just try again. But if we actually, draw our stuff, we draw what the cards that we put in there to counter, other decks, and it just doesn't work, then it's like, all right, well, what can we change? Fix that weakness. So
And yeah, and to comment on that, I think he Chino brings that strength that I sometimes lack when I'm deck building, which is, I talked about kind of keeping your strategy linear and not being able to attack it or get off point from a bunch of different angles, essentially. So, what I really appreciate and why we do well together is because he, you ask, do we tweak it every other game or every game or every other game? If it were fucking up to me and I didn't have Chino on there, I'd be fucking swapping cards left and right like a crazy ass lunatic that doesn't know what he wants to do. But, to have that analytical perspective where, as he said, his strength is taking something, tweaking it, making it better. That's really helpful. And that brings to the point of, professional players have teams that they play with that all put these decks together, offer a different perspective, difference of opinion, which is really, really helpful. And again, he will take the time to watch me play the deck and give his feedback, because I think again it is a little bit more, you know, it's fun to take an idea that's as crazy that as hyper mill or lucky clover mill or what some of the other crazy things that we've done, and just kind of tweak it and see how far you can take it before we have to throw in the towel because we're playing as mono red aggro and they're just taking a dump on our porch.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
yeah,
just
mono red's powerful.
side note, it's just every time that we try to make a mill deck, it's like we need so many cards to get to the milling that there's no room for anything else. So that's why it always tends to be a race because
But I
it's
think
like
I think you know, that's the way Mill should be. It should
Yeah,
be a
no,
race.
because otherwise it would just be so too overpowered, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Because even the modern version is a race. Right? I
Yeah.
think it's
Yep.
just like the way the cards are designed. It's like that. Now, has any of you guys had a chance to do any mill decks in Historic yet?
Actually, no, I haven't.
I haven't either, but all
not
this
either.
talk, I'm like, you know what? I need to, because we all have made them in previous standards, and now it's like, you know what? We have a lot of cards that we could probably brew a mill deck again.
Well, I was gonna say the second session of the podcast, I was we do talk about bannings, but maybe it's follow up on all
Yeah, maybe
crazy
just
stupid
a
ass
mill.
brews we did.
Well, so speaking about brews, like I did a mono black discard deck for Historic because the new set of Historic cards have come out, like the Historic Anthology as they call it, and Waste Not was one of the new cards that was added in for Arena. Now, if you're not familiar with Waste Not, it was originally printed in N15. It's an enchantment that costs 1 and a black, and it's got a huge line of text on it because it's all designed about making your opponent discard a card. And when they do, something happens. So if they discard a creature, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature. Sweet. If they discard a land, hey, guess what? You get mana. You get double black added to your mana pool. And if they discard a non-creature, you get to draw a card. So it's like kind of a value engine for discard-based decks. And I was playing this and having some fun with it, but it wasn't winning as well as some of the other decks that are running around Historic. And then I hopped over on MTG Goldfish the other day, and I saw this single scoop Grixis Waste Knot. And I was like, ooh, this list looks so much better than the mono black version that I'm running right now. But I think it's like, you know, kind of going on that of I had this idea and now I can go, you know what? Now I'm seeing other people that have had similar ideas of making a discard based deck, and I can take those ideas that they have and incorporate it into mine, or just switch up and go, you know what? I can just now jump over and do a net deck version of it because I know somebody else has put in the reps and this version works better than my version. But where do you guys go to find lists like this? Like I went to Goldfish because that was, you know, I go on Goldfish all the time to find different lists of things and stuff like that. But where do you guys find lists that you want to be able to play? Chino, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, go ahead, Chino. I'm talking too much.
No, that's pretty much where I go as well. And then just talking to Nan, say, "Hey, Nan, what are you playing?
What do you
Anything
got
fun?"
going on?
Yeah, that's basically it. Or just Googling and just trying to find something that may be a bit off meta that still looks fun.
Right. Like you said, you might see a card and you're like, ooh, does somebody have a deck based on this?
Yeah, yeah. So, and then usually it's no, because it's just like you said, someone just came up with it themselves. But yeah.
Jaime, what about you? Do you go other places other than Goldfish?
Yeah, Goldfish is great. I actually I'll give you an answer for both. For net decks, I actually will go Goldfish and MTG Top 8. And then for crazy ass brewy kind of, I'm not sure if this is gonna work kind of things, I like Aether Hub. A lot of people load up crazy ideas on there, and they'll swear that they made it to Mythic Top 100 with their bullshit fucking 60 cards that they put together. It's not gonna work. Like, I've tried some of these theories, and I'm just like, I like to think I'm an okay Magic player. I'm by no means, you know, great or anything like that, but I will sit there and I will grind games, and I do not understand how these people make some of these decks work. But really, Aether Hub is a great source for people who really want to get a different perspective, and even net decks that are currently in the meta. A lot of people take those and shift a bunch of cards around and kind of come up with some pretty cool ideas.
Nice. Yeah, the other one to think about is, of course, any of the websites like Star City Games, Channel Fireball, Card Kingdom, places like that also will have decks and things like that you can look up and find things, tournament results and stuff like that related to that. So there's so many resources that exist if you're looking for decks and things to be able to play, or just, you know, ask your friends because they might be playing something different. So, was there any other stuff that you guys wanted to talk about related to home brewing or net decking that we might have missed or hadn't had a chance to talk about yet? No? Cool.
So I guess just
way to cut off
It's
Chino
like
before
silence.
to finish. Oh, I was going to add something, but I want Chino to.
Yeah, Gino, go ahead.
well, yeah, just to this might be off topic. Well, actually, it is off topic, but just something that kept popping into my mind. It's like, because I sort of feel like things have been play tested so much that there is going to be like the most powerful card or the most powerful deck, and I just I don't know if it's possible. I doubt it is, but it's like, yeah, you want to release Oko, you want to release something that's just bonkers powerful, but like make one for each color. So it's like yeah, Oko's great, but that forces everyone to use blue and green at a minimum. So like if they release something that was equally as strong or close to it or whatever as like black red or white, some other color combination, so you're not forced into this little narrow corridor of blue green. And I think that would just make it, for me anyway, I'd be more likely to try different things because it's like, all right, I can, I think this card is cool. I don't want to be forced into the meta of everyone using Oko, so let me try this. Yeah, so I don't know. That's just,
well, it kind of reminds me, years ago, like Magic 2020, like when M2020 or 2012 came out. Sorry, not 2020, 2012, when they had the Titans, like Frost Titan, Grave Titan.
Oh yeah,
and it's like you could pick your color and still have a powerful Titan.
That's
right?
true.
Bring them back, please. Bring them back.
Like, because yes, Grave Titan was one of the best because you get to make a bunch of tokens off of him and things like that. Frost Titan was sweet because of your ability to tap things down. Sun Titan, you're like, okay, he might not be as good, but I can still bring things back. And everybody loves Primeval Titan, so
oh hell yeah.
So it's I think that was a nice way to try to I guess make it so it was a little more even. I don't know, based on even Infernal Titan, right? The red one, like all the colors were represented in that cycle essentially.
Yeah, I forgot about that, but yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like they designed them to be almost like a rock paper scissors kind of thing. Like this one's good against these 2 or 3, and this one but weak against these other ones. So you could do what you wanted, just knowing that there's a weakness and a strength for your deck. So that's I wish they would sort of do that, because I know they make decks that are like you can buy them and they're just meant to be played against each other. Yeah, if they made just like, if they want to continue making powerful cards, which obviously they will just to sell packs, but they designed it so or put multiple in there where it's maybe like one's weak to one and one's strong, like just mix it up a little bit, so you're not forced to choose the 1 or 2 powerful cards in the new set and use those.
Yeah, that would be nice. Jaime, did you have something else to add?
Oh yeah, my 2 comments real quick, and then my rant is, first comment is, hire this, he will help you. And the second thing is,
you broke out in the middle of that statement. I didn't hear it.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, if Wizards is listening, please hire this man. He's gonna help you guys.
Oh yeah, Chino. Yes.
Yeah, hire Chino, please. And the second thing is, that's the credibility. That's the whole point, is that Chino brought a very good point. I think cards get released for a certain color, it forces the format to kind of shift to that color, splash it in. I think diversity in cards will continue to create more of a diverse format for home brews and for people to trying out different things. And the biggest thing I would say is, make it, as you're brewing a new deck, put it out there to get feedback. I know, some individuals are okay with criticism, others are not. But I think having multiple people look at it, give you a different perspective, things that you haven't thought about, really, really help you develop your skill set in terms of building a deck. So the really cool thing that I can't stress enough, and has made me personally a better Magic player has been the idea of putting a deck together on my own and really kind of taking it from start to finish. And it could be an idea that I saw, like I talked about Mono Blue Devotion earlier, where I saw that deck, it kicked my ass, and I was like, man, I want to be that cool guy. So, I grinded, I kept doing it. I brought Chino in to help me with it. We were winning some games. We were on the top of the mountain, and we fucking fell off the cliff because we just lost a bunch in a row. So it is getting the reps in, and it is, finding an idea that may not fit in the meta, or actually maybe fits in the meta, and just continue to tweak it. I mean, I'll give you, my last example is it was actually maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I messaged Chino and I said, hey, look, I have a new cool idea I want to try out, and it's literally a blue, or I should say a Demir deck, so blue black, mill deck or hand destruction deck, and the entire purpose of the deck was to just shit on your hand, just dumpster your hand as much as possible, and we were successful. But I hadn't thought it all the way through, so I got rid of your hand. You got nothing. I'm on top of the world, and then I do nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because their hand is empty and you have a handful of hand destruction cards. It's like,
So and that's actually, one of our still work in progress that we kind of, didn't continue to pick up. But the point I was trying to make with with this point essentially is that, just because an idea at its first execution doesn't work out, that whole repetition and tweaking the idea is what's going to give you the better result. So again, having stepped into homebrewing and making fun ideas and everything, it makes you a better Magic player. It makes you think about things you never would have thought about. One of the biggest things with deck building is the curve, and I think a lot of people just when I first started would just put a bunch of cards in there. I don't give a shit if it costs 10 mana. Oh my god, when I get to turn 20, I'm gonna win the game. You're not gonna make it to turn 20. Especially if you're playing in standard or even in modern. If you want to
play a bunch of decks that use really expensive stuff, play Commander, guys.
Yes, there you go. I just want to encourage people to really do the home brewing and look at net decks as kind of the bad guys. Challenge that format. If you want to pick up Guild Gates because you're feeling fucking sharp that day, pick up Guild Gates, make it work. That's my public service announcement.
I like it. And I think, if you want to do more home brewing, like, you have the chance to do it on Arena, play some Historic for a while, play even some Standard, and you could just do play. You don't have to do Ranked if you want to just, like, mess around with stuff. Also, kind of the new kitchen table, right? If you think about when a lot of people started playing, they played kitchen table version. Commander is the new version of kitchen table, where you can just brew up some crazy stuff and just play silly things, and that's perfectly fine because you make a 100-card deck with singletons. So there's a lot of fun formats that are designed to help you with brewing and stuff. All right, any other thoughts on this net deck versus home brewing topic?
I don't know. You've inspired me to try to start homebrewing some more of my own stuff, especially with Historic, because I do like the card pool.
Well, hopefully we can get some home brews of Mill. Maybe that'll be our assignment for next time. We're all gonna make a Historic Mill deck and see how that works out.
Way ahead of you. I'm already in Arena.
I'm way ahead of you as well, Dan. I've had Magic up the entire time right now.
Messing around. I'm
gonna make this work. Yes.
Awesome.
No, but I think that's a cool idea. So maybe that's what we do for the Nexus. Let's play with some Mill Historic home brews. Let's give them a try. We can add links to the decks, and maybe we can even film some of the gameplay. We'll see this link, and we'll kind of start our next podcast with this topic and move on to the next thing.
Good stuff. All right, guys. Well, if you like this stuff, make sure you're hitting the subscribes, follow, all that good stuff. Of course, this is up on YouTube, so if you're watching here, you know what to do, or you could be listening. We've got the podcast up on iTunes and Spotify as well, so make sure you're following there if you want to know when a new episode comes out. But thanks for tuning in and watching, guys. I'm, of course, NanMan, joined by Chino and Jaime, and we'll see you guys next game. Thanks for tuning in and watching, guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and check the description for more information about other content that I'm doing. I've also got a new podcast, NanMan's Nerd Corner, which you guys can find out on Spotify or iTunes. It's got a bunch of Magic content as well as other stuff. Thanks for tuning in and watching, and I'll see you guys next game.